They built cities so advanced, so perfectly planned, that modern engineers still scratch their heads today. They had running water, sewage systems, and streets laid out in perfect grids. Thousands of years before Rome even existed. And then they vanished. No conquest, no great battle, no obvious catastrophe. One of the most powerful civilizations the ancient world had ever seen simply disappeared. This is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization and the mystery that has haunted historians for over a century. Picture this. It's 3300 BCE. There are no phones, no maps, no governments as we know them. Most of humanity is scattered in small tribes, struggling to survive. But along the banks of a great river, in what is today Pakistan, something remarkable is quietly beginning. The Indus River was not just water, it was life itself. Every year it flooded, leaving behind rich, dark soil, perfect for growing wheat and barley. People noticed, they stayed. Small camps became villages. Villages grew into towns, and towns became something no one had ever seen before. By 2600 BCE, just a few centuries later, this quiet river valley had exploded into one of the ancient world's greatest civilizations. Cities of tens of thousands of people, trade routes stretching hundreds of miles. A society so organized, so sophisticated, it would not be matched in that part of the world for another 1,000 years. This was not a slow accident. Someone, or many people, had a vision, and they built it. For over 4,000 years, the Indus Valley kept its secrets. Buried under layers of earth and time, entire cities lay silent and forgotten. No one knew they existed. No history book mentioned them. No legend spoke their name. Then, in 1921, a team of archaeologists digging in what is now Pakistan hit something hard beneath the soil. Bricks. Ancient, perfectly shaped bricks. They kept digging. What emerged from the earth would shock the entire world. They had found Harappa, a city that had been sleeping underground for 4 millennia. And just a few years later, 600 kilometers to the south, another city rose from the dust. Mohenjo-daro, the city of the dead. What the archaeologists found inside was almost impossible to believe. Streets laid out in perfect grids, like a modern city planner had designed them. Houses built from uniform baked bricks. A drainage and sewage system more sophisticated than anything found in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. Public baths, granaries, multi-story buildings. These people weren't primitive, they were brilliant. And somehow, impossibly, the entire world had forgotten them. Now here is where the story gets truly extraordinary. Walk through the streets of Mohenjo-daro in 2500 BCE, the city they would one day call the City of the Dead, and you would struggle to believe your eyes. The streets are not random dirt paths. They are wide, straight, and laid out in a perfect grid, running north to south, east to west, like the blueprint of a modern city. Every block is measured. Every corner is deliberate. This was not an accident. This was planning on a scale that the ancient world had almost never seen. The houses are built from standardized baked bricks. Every single brick the exact same size. Not just in Mohenjo-daro, not just in Harappa. Across every major Indus city, separated by hundreds of miles, the bricks are identical. Think about what that means. These people had standards, regulations, a system, and then there is the plumbing. At a time when most of the ancient world disposed of waste in open pits, Indus Valley homes had private bathrooms connected to a citywide underground drainage network. Clean water in, wastewater out. Covered brick sewage channels running beneath every major street. London didn't have a sewage system like this until 1865, but nothing prepares you for what sits at the heart of Mohenjo-daro, the Great Bath, a massive, watertight pool, 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, built with such precision that after 4,500 years, archaeologists found it still perfectly sealed. Around it, changing rooms, corridors, private chambers. Was it a place of religious purification, a gathering place for the city's elite, a temple to water itself? Nobody knows. And that mystery, that silence where answers should be, is perhaps the most haunting thing about this entire civilization. But the Indus Valley people were not just builders, they were traders, and they were extraordinarily good at it. Imagine a merchant leaving Mohenjo-daro in 2000 BCE. He carries cotton cloth, the finest in the ancient world, woven from crops grown in the fertile Indus floodplains. He carries carnelian beads, polished to a deep blood red, pottery, copper tools, precious stones pulled from the mountains of Afghanistan. His destination, Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, over 2,000 kilometers away. No cars, no roads, no maps, just desert, mountain ranges, and open sea. And yet he makes it. And when archaeologists excavated the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, civilizations that kept detailed written records, they found something remarkable. Indus Valley seals, Indus Valley beads, Indus Valley goods. The proof was sitting in the ruins all along. These two great civilizations, separated by thousands of kilometers, knew each other, traded with each other, needed each other. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Indus Valley trade is something almost invisible. Their weights. Across every city, every market, every merchant in the entire civilization, the weights and measures were identical. A perfect standardized system. If you bought cotton in Harappa, you got the exact same measurement as if you bought it in Mohenjo-daro. Hundreds of miles away. No cheating, no confusion, no dispute. This was not a primitive barter economy. This was a regulated, sophisticated commercial system that most ancient civilizations would not develop for another 1,000 years. These people understood something that takes most societies centuries to figure out, that trust is the foundation of commerce. And they built that trust into stone. But for all we know about how they traded, there is one thing about these people that remains completely out of reach. And then there is the mystery that has driven scholars to the edge of madness for over a century. The writing. Scattered across the ruins of every major Indus city, archaeologists have found thousands of small stone seals. They fit in the palm of your hand. Each one is engraved with tiny, precise symbols. Animals, geometric shapes, figures that seem to mean something important. This is the Indus script. And to this day, after 100 years of trying, no one has been able to read it. Not for lack of effort. The greatest linguists, cryptographers, and archaeologists on the planet have spent entire careers attacking this script. Computers have analyzed it. Artificial intelligence has been applied to it. Entire academic careers have been built and destroyed trying to crack it. Nothing. The symbols refuse to give up their secrets. Part of the problem is heartbreaking. We have never found a bilingual inscription. No Rosetta Stone for the Indus Valley. No text written in both the Indus script and a language we already understand. Without that key, the door remains locked. Over 4,000 symbols identified. Hundreds of theories proposed. Zero consensus. And so we are left staring at these tiny seals, holding them in our hands, knowing that somewhere inside these carved marks is the voice of an entire civilization. Their laws, their prayers, their stories, their names. All of it is there. All of it is silent. We can see their cities. We can touch their pottery. We can walk their streets, but we cannot hear them. And perhaps that silence, more than anything else, is what makes the Indus Valley Civilization the most haunting story in all of human history. And yet, despite that silence, the objects they left behind speak volumes. But behind the grand cities, the trade routes, and the unsolved mysteries, there were people. Ordinary, extraordinary people. A farmer waking before dawn to tend his wheat fields along the riverbank. A potter shaping clay vessels with hands that knew exactly what they were doing. Producing work so refined that examples survive intact to this day. A merchant counting his standardized weights before heading to the market. A mother braiding her daughter's hair, adorned with tiny carnelian beads strung on copper wire. We know these details because they left things behind. Thousands of objects pulled from the earth tell us who these people really were. Ceramic pots painted with geometric patterns so precise they look almost modern. Bronze figurines of dancing women, arms outstretched, hips tilted, frozen mid-movement for 4,500 years. Jewelry of such delicate craftsmanship that modern jewelers have studied it for inspiration. And then there are the toys, small clay animals with movable heads, miniature carts with wheels that actually spin, whistles shaped like birds, children's toys. Think about that for a moment. 4,500 years ago, in a city that no longer exists, speaking a language no one can read. A child played with a toy cart, pushed it across a brick floor, made sounds with it, laughed. The details of their religion remain unclear. Their kings, if they had kings, are unknown. Their language is silent. But in that small clay cart with spinning wheels, something crosses the distance of millennia. These were not monuments, not mysteries, not ruins. They were people, just like us. And then, silence. Around 1900 BCE, something began to go wrong. Not suddenly, not with a single catastrophic moment, but slowly, painfully, irreversibly, the greatest civilization in the ancient world began to unravel. The first signs were subtle. Trade slowed. Fewer ships left the ports. The standardized weights that had held commerce together for centuries appeared less frequently in the archaeological record. The streets, once meticulously maintained, began to show signs of neglect. Smaller, poorly built structures appeared where grand buildings once stood, as if the people who knew how to build properly were already gone. Then the cities themselves began to empty. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dolavira. One by one, the great urban centers that had hummed with life for 700 years fell quiet. People packed what they could carry and left. Where did they go? Nobody knows for certain. But why? This is where historians disagree. Passionately, furiously, without resolution. Some point to the climate. Ancient tree ring data and soil samples suggest that around 1900 BCE, the monsoon rains that fed the Indus River began to weaken. The river that had given everything, fertile soil, drinking water, trade routes, began to shift course. Without water, the farms failed. Without farms, the cities starved. Others point to catastrophic flooding. Evidence of massive flood deposits has been found beneath the ruins of Mohenjo-daro. Layers of destruction buried under layers of rebuilding, buried under layers of destruction again. A civilization fighting the same river that created it. Some historians suggest disease. Others suggest internal collapse. Inequality growing, the social contract breaking, people simply losing faith in the system that had held them together. The honest answer is that we do not know. What we do know is this: the farmer who woke before dawn to tend his fields. Gone. The potter whose hands shaped clay with thousand-year-old knowledge. Gone. The child with the toy cart. Gone. The streets that had been swept clean every morning for 7 centuries slowly filled with dust. The drainage channels that had carried away the city's waste fell into disrepair, then collapsed, then disappeared beneath the earth. The seals with their unreadable symbols stopped being carved, and one day, we don't know exactly when, the last person left Mohenjo-daro, walked out through those perfectly planned grid streets for the final time, and never came back. The city of the dead had finally earned its name. For 4,000 years, no one would know it had ever existed. And yet, they are not truly gone. Every time archaeologists brush dust from a carved stone seal, they are there. Every time a historian stares at those undeciphered symbols, searching for meaning, they are there. Every time we marvel at a civilization that built sewage systems while the rest of the world was still living in mud, they are there. The Indus Valley people left no pyramids towering above the desert, no golden death masks, no written records we can read, no kings whose names echo through history. They left something rarer. They left a mystery. And in that mystery, in the silence of those unread symbols, in the emptiness of those perfectly planned streets, in the small clay toy cart lying in the dust, they have achieved something extraordinary. They have made us care. 4,500 years after the last person walked out of Mohenjo-daro, you are here, watching, wondering, thinking about people whose names you will never know, whose language you cannot read, whose faces you will never see. That is not failure. That is immortality. The greatest civilizations in history are remembered for their conquests, their emperors, their wars. The Indus Valley Civilization is remembered for something different, for the questions it leaves unanswered, for the life it quietly lived, for the child who once pushed a small clay cart across a brick floor and laughed. We may never crack their code, we may never know their kings, their gods, their stories, but we know this. They built something so remarkable, so ahead of its time, so deeply human, that 4.5 millennia later, it still stops us in our tracks. Some silences are louder than words, and the silence of the Indus Valley, vast, deep, and full of everything we will never know, may be the loudest silence in all of human history. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, if that toy cart stayed with you, share this with someone who loves history, because stories like this deserve to be heard. The Indus Valley people had no voice left. We can be theirs.